Let's talk to John Holland-Kaye, who's Chief Executive of Heathrow Airport, and joins us now. Good morning to you, John. John, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, good. We've got you. Lovely.
Good to speak to you.
Now, lots to talk about this morning, particularly related to, of course, the issues of vaccination passports. But first up, let's talk about Heathrow Airport's results. You've got the full results in for 2020. And I don't think it's going to be a surprise to many people that the news isn't very good.
No, it was a shocking year on many levels. A loss of £2 billion, and very, very few companies would ever report losses like that. But I have to pay tribute to all of my colleagues who've done such a fantastic job of keeping the airport moving safely for the last year in really difficult circumstances. Personally, going through a lot of change, and they've kept us strong so that when the recovery does come, Heathrow will be there to get people on their holidays, but also get British exports all over the world, which, as you know, is a hugely important part of what we do.
Yeah, whenever we've discussed what happens at Heathrow Airport and in other big airports around the country, people often think of it as just, I just get my little break for the in Spain or going to Florida, but it's not. Our airports are a crucial part of our economy. I'm going to make everyone have to listen to this once again, but I find this absolutely astonishing when you realise us playing this major role as a hub airport nation, how important our airports are to import and export to our overall national economy.
No, you're absolutely right. And you think about us being a small island trading nation, we're more dependent on international trade than most countries are. You think about someone like the US, they've got a massive domestic market. The EU is now effectively a domestic market for France and Germany, and we are an independent trading nation. So we are more dependent on international travel and trade than many others. And of course, a lot of our exports going around the world, particularly if they're high value or just have to get there quickly, go on planes. And they're the same planes that carry you on your holiday or take British business people around the world. So getting travel moving again, getting our borders open, helping passengers to fly safely is absolutely vital to protecting jobs here in the UK.
Yeah, you can't get the cargo in and out if the plane doesn't exist, and the plane only exists if you've got people travelling. Now, you saw overall passenger numbers collapse 73%, and that even allows for the summer when people were allowed to travel and Christmas to some destinations. That's all over now. It is basically illegal to get on a plane and go anywhere unless you've got very, very, very pressing reason to do so. For all intents and purposes, the government's permission to leave the country or enter the country. We've got the quarantine. We've got the huge extra cost of those PCR tests. One before you go to get on a plane anywhere, and you've got one before you come to get back, and two afterwards as well. I mean, we're adding a huge, huge, huge cost. If we are going to get back to some level of foreign holidays this year, and you know what, the people who think those don't matter, well, lucky old you. For millions of people, it's what they work for all year. They work hard to have that break. Now, what do you think is going to be necessary? Because is it sustainable to get people back flying on a holiday unless we've got a vaccine passport, say, if we've still got quarantine, if we've still got all these massive costs, 150 quid a go to get these PCR tests? Is that viable?
Well, this is exactly what we need to fix over the next few months with this global travel task force that the Prime Minister has announced. And I think there are a few things that need to be sorted out there. First of all, what is this risk-based approach going to be to allow borders to open again? What I imagine would be the case is that there are some countries that are considered very low risk, where we have travel corridors with no need for checks on whether you've had tests and no need for any kind of quarantine. And then there'll be some countries which are very high risk where you do need all of that, similar to what we have today. And then there'll be some countries in the middle. But over time, as COVID is brought under control around the world, we should get back to normal travel without the need for all these tests and so on. Secondly, what are the tests that are going to be needed and how do we automate them? Because as you say, not only do you have to show your passport now, you have to show you have to demonstrate that you've had particular tests, that you're going to have further tests that have been booked when you get to when you get back home. You have to give lots of information about where you're going to be staying and potentially staying in a quarantine hotel. This is a massive burden on an individual, all of which is pieces of paper. And that needs to be turned into a single app so that when you check in, it's more like it used to be, that you just show your app. It confirms in a secure and safe way that you have all the accreditation you need, and then you can get on your journey.
Well, indeed. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Is that actually it's maybe functioning when you've only got a few thousand people going through the airport, but it's not going to function when you've got millions travelling again. Lots of people are still very afraid of travel. There's this whole idea. I mean, the public support for lockdown, I still find terrifying, frankly. The public support for closing our borders, sort of forever more people, arriving in hazmat suits and being, buried underground for a month before they're allowed out because there's such a risk. The fear that how could you possibly go on an airplane? I've had people tweeting me saying, "What sort of mum would allow her daughter to get on an airplane to go on holiday?" I mean, I've got 6 flights since the over the last year since we've had the lockdown, and I felt perfectly safe on all of them and perfectly safe in the airports. What are we going to have to do to persuade people to get back on planes? Because even in the summer when people could travel, we still saw incredibly low rates of people booking.
Well, a lot of it is that there just haven't been many places you can fly to. So as we've seen with people making bookings recently, there is a massive desire to go somewhere, either on holiday or just business people who need to go and see their customers and make sure that they're still going to buy from a British company, not from a French or German company. This is the real world, and people need to get out there again. Travel is very safe. We have part of the reason why there are currently these pre-departure tests is to make sure that no one is getting on the plane who has COVID. So it is a higher level of checking than exists in many other aspects of our life. Absolutely. Many countries have very low COVID levels at the moment. Australia and New Zealand, Singapore, Hong Kong, very, very low levels of COVID. And so we should be able to start opening up normal travel without all the checks and quarantines and vaccination certificates to those countries very soon, as long as they are happy to accept people from the UK, which you'd hope would be the case over the next few months as incident levels come down here. And I think the UK can really show a lead in how to open up international travel again. We'll be one of the first big economies to have a major vaccination program. We can start to set the standards that other countries can choose to follow, so we can have frictionless travel, because it's not just the controls that you have to go through coming into the UK. Many other countries have controls to go into their countries too, and it's a different set of requirements, different tests, different demonstration. The more that we can simplify and standardize that and put it into an app rather than a piece of paper, the easier we can get people moving again and save jobs here in the UK.
Absolutely. John Holland-Kaye, Chief Executive of Heathrow Airport. Thank you for that. A quick word for Benjamin Butterworth from the iPaper, who's listening into all of that. I mean, are you desperate to go back on a holiday? Do you be happily booking a plane? Because it seems to me one of the things that, this massive support for lockdown and don't ease it too quickly or keep it slow, I thought was rather contradicted by the fact that apparently everybody got straight on to trying to book a foreign holiday as soon as they found out what date we might be able to go.
Yeah, I'm absolutely desperate to go back traveling. I think a lot of young people in particular, it's one of the great freedoms that you have, before you start a family or get a mortgage or anything. And so I traveled last year to Spain and to Portugal on 2 different trips. But of course, one of the great fears was the quarantine rules changing for countries for when you went and came back. But there's another factor here, which is for a lot of people, it's not just about the perfectly legitimate joy of having a holiday. It's about seeing their own loved ones and their families, maybe their own elderly parents that live in different countries. And I think that's a big thing, that people are going to be desperate to book those flights to go and see their relatives.
Yeah, and again, I think people forget actually an awful lot of the travel. People talk about people quarantining. Now they are people returning from or coming to visit relatives who were very, very sick or people they've not seen for a year. And, I think, families do matter.